Hello and welcome to Game Changer, brought to you by Connor's Coaching. My name is Daniel Connor. I'm a certified professional coach and a member of the International Coaching Federation, and I bring to you Game Changer each week at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, where we create together an inspired community around topics of positivity, coaching, personal development, mindset, emotional awareness, and more. Um, and our guests join us usually on the second and fourth Wednesday of each month. When people hire me as a coach, they're hiring me because they're ready to get unstuck. They're ready to discover a more fulfilling and purposeful life, and so that every day that they can wake up to a better version of themselves reflected in the mirror. In my last video, I announced that I was going to have a guest today. That guest is Leslie King. She's one of my best friends. She's a coach. She's been a client of mine. She's also been my coach for a while. She wanted to talk to you today about imposter syndrome. It's this little nagging feeling that other people are more qualified than you and that you don't belong here and that people are going to find out and think that you're less than you are, right? And there are tons of ways to deal with it. It's something that coaches deal with a lot. It's also one of her personal favorite topics to talk about, and she was really excited to be here today, but she couldn't be here today. And I remember when she told me that I felt this question come up of, how do I want to respond to this? I don't want to hurt her feelings. She's already had a really rough week. She was sick last week. She lives in the East where there's just terrible weather going on. She had to delay her family's Christmas. Just a lot of stressful events have been happening. So I knew Leslie was already feeling a lot of stress. I didn't need to add to that, and I didn't want to add to that. And so I had this question of, well, how do I want to act? Who do I want to be tomorrow? Who do I want to see when I look back at this moment? And I realized, no brainer, I want to be the good guy who says, no problem, no sweat, not a big deal. It would have been very easily understandable in the moment had I freaked out, had I panicked. And I want to talk about that consciousness. I want to talk about that choice. I want to talk about perspective. And I'm going to do this by sharing with you my personal philosophy around this. This is a philosophy that I've developed over the year, the past year of really working with clients, really kind of honing in on myself and working on myself. And when you go into a coaching program, when you're learning an ICF accredited coaching program, a good coaching program is going to have you question a lot about yourself and your beliefs and your philosophies and that kind of thing. Partially because they don't matter at all in the sphere of coaching. The coaching is all about the client. And so if the client, you have to learn who you are so that you can prevent it from interfering in a coaching relationship. And it doesn't mean that I can't share my personal philosophies. It just means that my personal philosophies they're not capital T truth. But they work for me. And it would be unfair for me not to share that with my clients when my clients are there specifically to explore what they believe in. One of the things that I believe strongly, and I believe this for a very long time, is that when people get upset, the core reason for that upset is an expectation. An expectation, let's call it something that you put on the world, a rule that you expect the world to live by, and then when the world doesn't live by that, it breaks that expectation, and that usually triggers some form of reaction from you. Oftentimes it's a negative reaction. Not every expectation is bad. There are types of expectations that are very healthy and good to have. Like, I expect people not to hurt me. That's a really healthy expectation to have. But when you get to a place where your expectation is broken or challenged by someone, like I expect my guest to show up for an episode, You have a choice of how you want to handle that. And sometimes it doesn't feel like a choice. Sometimes it feels like I have to react this way, or this is the only way that's reasonable for me to react. And that isn't true. Specifically, when Leslie told me that, maybe we should probably just reschedule this episode for a later date if you're okay with that. And I was. Um, I could have said, no, I'm really angry about this. I could have hulked out. I could have, you wouldn't have liked me when I'm angry, right? But I didn't. I had a choice in that moment. And the thing that I work with my clients a lot on is subconscious versus conscious expectations. So, um, we, I believe that you have two halves of yourself, conscious and unconscious, however you want to refer to it, ego and superego, or id, or whatever. I don't care. It doesn't matter. For me, I use subconscious and conscious. And I believe that when the expectations live in our unconscious world, we don't have the control needed to make that choice. But when they live in our conscious world, we have all the control of how we want to react or how we want to behave or how we want to move forward in our lives. And the more, there are other things that go on, like health and illness and things like that. When I have high levels of pain, for example, it's much harder to keep my consciousness in control, and it's much easier to just let my subconscious do a lot of the controlling. And that means that I have a lot more regrets later to deal with, usually. But when you let your consciousness control your expectations and your reactions to those expectations, it completely changes things. The next thing that I believe in is in perspective. That's the real focus of today's episode is perspective. So I want to talk about that negativity bias and that conscious versus unconscious choice that's there, but you can't see that choice unless you have a good perspective. So, um, just really quickly, everyone on Earth has negativity bias in the world. Everyone. It's a survival mechanism. This is my personal philosophy again. I'm not a neuroscientist. This is information that I've gleaned from watching information about neuroscientists that I believe on an almost spiritual level. But everyone on Earth, I believe, has negativity bias. This is our ability to instantly react to a broken expectation that immediately presumes that we're in danger, that we're threatened, that something bad is going to happen to us, so that we can react or act in a way that's going to preserve our health. So think about it like if a tiger was chasing you down in the jungle, you don't want to sit there and wonder whether or not the tiger's just there to give you cuddles and loves or if it's going to eat you. Your brain takes care of that for you. That's your subconscious negativity bias saying, hey, we need to either run or we need to find a way to escape or we need to turn around and fight this tiger. But when you're dealing with a guest canceling on your show, treating her like a tiger coming after you and deciding whether you're going to fight, flight, flee, or freeze, that's not the best reaction, right? That's a social situation, not a life or death situation. So this negativity bias, in in all honesty, we wouldn't be here as a species if we didn't have it. And it comes from the very center part of our brain. I believe in a layered brain theory that the lizard brain or the very central cortex of your brain, the central nervous system, the column, the brain stem, and your cerebral cortex, those things take over in times of emergency to keep you alive and keep you surviving. But in times of social stress, your mammalian brains, the prefrontal cortex that specifically is developed really well in human beings, gives us the option to have empathy as a new tool set, to have a belief in a strong sense of ethos or ethics, in the world around us. Morality is another function of the prefrontal cortex. When you get stressed out, when those catabolic hormones show up of anxiety, of adrenaline, of cortisol, those parts of your brain tend to be less active in the central part of your brain that is all about fighting, flighting, fleeing, or freezing. That's the part that goes active, right? Well, in modern society, I think that negativity bias gets in the way more than it needs to. And so it would have been completely understandable when Leslie canceled if I did feel panic or frustration or anxiety or distress or woe is me or unfairness or any other form of immediate knee jerk reaction to that broken expectation. And I didn't. And this isn't me touting my own horn or tooting my own horn. This isn't touting my philosophy as the only way to be. What I'm trying to share is that it has really saved me over the last couple of months to have that better awareness, that feeling of control over my own reactions, my own actions, that has really come about from a very specific set of activities that I can directly link to my ability to, in that moment, look at myself and say, who do I want to see in the mirror tomorrow? So I consciously found myself questioning, how do I want to look at this tomorrow? How do I want to feel about myself tomorrow? How do I want to act today so that tomorrow when I look back at this moment that I don't have regrets, that I don't fear looking at myself? And I've worked hard to get into this place. It's not an easy road to go, but it works. And it really helps me not feel immediately personally attacked every time an expectation is broken. It still happens. Again, when I'm experiencing high levels of pain or stress, yeah, I notice that it happens. It tends to happen less. It tends to be a lot easier to recover. And even in those darker moments, there is a stronger voice from my conscious side speaking up and helping me guide my path. It makes me feel better when I let my consciousness take control. And that just makes sense to me. So I've shared with you that um, it's all about perspective for me. That this idea of conscious control or consciously deciding how you want to act when an expectation is broken is all about perspective. And it is. Because when you're shifted into that kind of negative catabolic state, when you're in that the world is happening to you state, that victim mindset, your focus on reality is really driven down to just who you are. You're not necessarily engaged in that prefrontal cortex world of empathy and of morality and of living in a society. It's just woe is me. It's just me. It's like an eyeball having your pupils dilating or expanding and contracting to let in more light when you're happy or when it's dark, or less light when you're stressed out or when it's too bright. Another way of looking at this would be through hormones. You know that I talk about oxytocin and and dopamine and testosterone a lot. Those, I think of those as we use the word anabolic hormones as a certified professional coach. We talk about anabolic hormones a lot. Anabolic hormones just mean it's a good way of saying feel good hormones, hormones that optimize the body. And when you experience high levels of oxytocin, I believe your eyes, or everyone's eyes, naturally dilate. They naturally expand to let in as much of that image and memory as possible. So it's a sign of love, actually, when you're gazing in someone's eyes and their eyes dilate. That's a sign that oxytocin is being released. also during pleasurable activities like eating good food or enjoying a good story or watching a movie that excites you or taking a drug that actually increases your dopamine because your dopamine is being triggered by either good food or unnaturally being triggered by an illicit substance. Um, Dopamine also causes your eyes to expand, and testosterone also. It causes your eyes to expand. That feeling of that rush of feeling totally in control of a situation, totally capable of feeling a situation. Those are feelings that we associate with high levels of testosterone occurring naturally or unnaturally, maybe. Either way, your eyes dilate to let in as much of that situation as possible. Well, it's a lot like that with your brain. When your brain is turned on by testosterone or oxytocin or dopamine, those hormones are there to help optimize your functioning for social interaction. They're there to optimize your functioning for mental interaction. They're there to optimize your body for physical interaction. And the three hormones that those three hormones in particular um, really expand your consciousness and your awareness of the world around you. You're less focused on me and you're more focused on the world that you're interacting with. But when you're stressed out, when you're anxious, your pupils shrink down and they collapse into tiny little pinpricks to let as little of that world in because your consciousness is very focused on you. These are things that I believe on a spiritual level. Okay. Um, and and so we know the very front part of your brain, the very front of your prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that is specifically responsible for telling stories around your world in which you're the hero, in which the world is you know, doing good things for you. And specifically, oxytocin and dopamine both have a triggering response for increasing the activity of that area. So if that's true, then it makes sense that the more regularly you access those hormones, those states of mind, that consciousness level, the more aware of the world around you you are, and the more your positive your stories are going to be, because it's the complete opposite of the negativity bias that your cerebellum and that your brainstem are trying to take control of stressful situations over. So when you're optimized, instead of being in that survival mode, your entire brain is functioning just like that eyeball on an expanded level in which there is more of reality that's happening. And that is the key for why, when I got bad news about my guest today showing up, that I was able to say, how do I want to act about this? It was the entire reason of why I was able to think about how Leslie's was experiencing the world, about how she was sick last week, about how stressful the weather must be in the East right now. I saw pictures of how bad it was. Like it was epic. It was a 500-year storm. I think I've heard a couple of politicians mentioning. And because of this, you when your mind is expanded on that level, you're having a more holistic and whole view of the world around you that you're living in. So if perspective is all about dilating your eyes and your mind enough so that your go-to lizard brain recognizes that your best option for survival is to just let it, then that's when your consciousness is going to take over instead of being in that subconscious world of how do I fight, flight, flee, or freeze? I can't seem to say that correctly today for the life of me, but, um, you know, instead of letting that lizard brain take over, your lizard brain is saying, hey, you know what? Our best chance for survival is to actually use that human part of our brain, that part of our brain that was designed specifically to interact in the world around us on a positive way. So, how did I get there? How did I get to that point? What actions did I take? Did I just suddenly believe that and that was that easy? No. It takes a lot of effort. One, it takes awareness, and two, it takes control. Those are the two halves of the whole. And if you've heard us talking on this channel, if you heard my guests talking at all on this channel about emotional intelligence, you will recognize that that is the hallmark of the starts of emotional intelligence. And it's not saying that a person who does that is intelligent. It's saying that a person who does that has learned to tap in to their emotional intelligence. And if you can tap into it on a conscious level, then you can choose when you're going to pull that tool out of your toolbox. And so the big thing that I have been doing, especially lately, is journaling. I work with my clients a lot on journaling. I feel very strongly about how successful journaling can make someone. I have seen my clients who have picked up journaling become immediately more self aware and more conscious about how they want to control. And that isn't to say that journaling is a magic bullet. In fact, there are specific pitfalls and traps that you can fall into with journaling that just kind of, in my opinion, kind of maybe perpetuate some of the negativity that can be going around in your life. Instead, it's more along the lines of shaping who you want to be, who you want to see in the mirror, how you want to behave going forward, what your beliefs are, what your mindset is, what the rules of the world that you live in are. It's about consciously creating your subconscious, because journaling to me is the quintessential point in which both halves of your mind, the conscious and the subconscious, are interacting with each other and communicating with each other the most authentically that they can. The other part of this is daily affirmations, daily meditations, um, breathing, and being the best version of myself that I can be. And this is a journey that I have been on forever. But it's a journey that I started to define for myself in 2010. And it gets better every year that I practice it. I cannot imagine how miserable my life would be if I had never learned that key lesson. That lesson of I have a choice. In any given moment, I have a choice. I have a choice to either be a victim or a hero in my own story. And that is awareness. That is building your awareness. And honestly, if you build your awareness, you're going to build your self control also. If you can get to the point where you are very acutely aware of the mental state in which you're approaching reality, it makes perfect sense that the way that you interact with that reality is going to follow suit. Now, this is not an easy path to be down. I think journaling is the easiest way to get into it. I think that meditation is another excellent way to get into it. And I know that over the eons of human history, religion for a lot of people has also been a very um, measured and responsible way to get into it. It can be a very fulfilling way to get into it, because with religion they talk about, bettering yourself and healing the world around you and interacting in a positive way. You hear things like, what would Jesus do? Right? The WWJD bracelets that were really popular for a while in the early 2000s. That mindset is a lot like deciding, who do I want to see in the mirror tomorrow? Who do I want to be when I look back at this moment? Regardless of who you are, regardless of what you believe, I believe that having a better perspective of the world around you is only going to improve your ability to make wiser choices in the long run. And that is going to result in you feeling better overall about who you are, and to reduce the stress that you experience from the world around you. And if you need help doing that, a personal coach, probably the best investment that you could get. A personal coach like me is going to be happy to help you improve your own perspective and performance through coaching. I'm going to ask you to tell me what you want to be measured by. And I'm going to ask you how you're measuring yourself in those moments. If you're interested in that, you can check me out on my webpage at connerscoaching.com. That's CONNERS coaching.com. And there's a book me page. You can schedule me a 60-minute free consultation call to learn about what it is that coaching is and to talk about what my help would look like. I am so thrilled to be here and to be able to make a conscious choice to show up today as my best self. And I know that this self is a lot better than the person who just threw it all to the wind and said, oh my God, my world is caving in and I can never do this episode. Or I can't go on today. Or what, woe is me. Those were options. I just didn't choose them. And if you want to help me out in my journey in spreading a message of positivity and of personal development and emotional well being, then it would really do a lot to sign into YouTube, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and to leave a message. Those things, in and of themselves, will really help expand this to be as big as it can be. And I will be back next year in just a week to share with you more mindful tricks about the world. And until then, I hope you choose to live more purposefully, mindfully, and consciously. We'll see you then.